have low vision or have another print disability which makes reading, holding a book, or turning a page difficult or impossible. The content is copyrighted by the respective publishers. For more information, please visit us on the web at nfradioreading.org.
Well, hello there. This is Lori Morose, and for the next hour, I will be reading from the dailynews.com, serving Genesee, Wyoming, and Orleans County, Tuesday, February 24th, 2026. Batavia Daily News, a Niagara Frontier radio reading service. The first article we'll cover is Woman Accuses State of Sex Assault Cover-Up. New York State Focus tracks down former Groveland prison employee. Written by Chris Giraldi. They're always saying you're lying. They always say you're lying, Beverly Footman says. This story originally appeared in New York Focus, a nonprofit news publication, investigative power in New York. Sign up for their newsletter at https://tinewyorkurl.com. Beverly Footman wants to forget the 3 prison staffers who she says abused her while she was incarcerated, but they haunt her. One was a cook at Groveland Correctional Facility, where she was locked up in the early 1990s. Around 3 times a week for over a year, he would corner her in the walk-in refrigerator and other parts of the kitchen where she worked, and forced her to have sex with him. Footman alleges she only knew him by his last name. Footman didn't report Fitzpatrick while she was in prison. He called her degrading and racist names and told her bad things would happen if she made trouble, she recalled. She believed him. Staff covered for one another's abuse, she told New York Focus. If you tell them something, they say you're lying, Footman says. Everything you do is a lie. Decades after her alleged abuse, Footman got her chance to push for some accountability. In 2023, she sued the state under the Adult Supervisors Act, a law that opened a year-long window for sexual assault victims to file civil lawsuits outside the normal statutes of limitation. But last November, State Attorney General Letitia James' office, which is defending the state against Adult Survivors Act suits, asked a judge to toss the case. Among the first of hundreds of dismissals the state has planned to request. One of the state's central arguments, a search conducted by the Department of Corrections and Community Supervisions, the prison agency, turned up no record of anyone named Fitzpatrick ever working at Groveland Prison. New York Focus conducted its own search and quickly found a former employee matching Footman's description. Upon uncovering the cook's employment records, New York Focus sought comment from state officials as well as Footman's lawyers, who subsequently alerted the judge to the findings. Within hours, the Attorney General's office rescinded its request to dismiss the lawsuit. For now, the case is moving forward. New York Focus tried to reach Fitzpatrick through multiple phone numbers and email addresses found online. After publication, a man identified himself as Fitzpatrick and as the former head of the mess hall at Groveland reached out to deny the allegations in Footman's lawsuit. He was unaware of the lawsuit and claimed its description of his height, weight, hair, and glasses are incorrect. He said that he remembers Footman, that he doesn't remember any other employee fitting the description in the lawsuit, and that he wasn't aware of sexual abuse taking place in the prison. New York Focus was unable to independently verify whether he was the same Fitzpatrick who worked at the prison. In response to the request for comment, a spokesperson for the Attorney General's office said that it was the prison agent's responsibility to find Fitzpatrick. They referred questions about why the state didn't identify him to DOCCS, which says it does not comment on pending litigations. The state's reversal in Footman's case is a pivot pivotal moment in the effort to hold DOCCS accountable for alleged sexual assault by staff. Her lawsuit is one of roughly 1,600 adult supervisors act claims that have alleged abuse by state prison employees, and the state is fighting them hard. In December, New York Focus and Hellgate reported that the state's attorney were planning to ask judges to dismiss up to 500 of the cases before they got off the ground, citing rules that require initial claims in the lawsuit against the state to include exact details of the alleged harm. Those filing requirements are stricter than in any other kind of civil cases and create an especially high hurdle for trauma survivors who often can't remember specific details of their abuse, advocates for the survivors said. Available data indicates that sexual abuse in DOCCS facilities is a rampant problem. National surveys of incarcerated people have consistently ranked New York women's prisons among the nation's highest in reported staff sexual misconduct. Asked about whether it plans to move forward with the dismissal requests, the Attorney General's office said it could not comment on its legal plans. Adult Survivors Act. Cases can be emotionally painfully and difficult, especially for survivors, the spokesperson added. So far, New York Focus and Hellgate have identified 2 cases in which the Attorney General's office has tested the early dismissal tactic. In the first, a judge tossed a lawsuit over typos in the claim. The other case is Footman's. In her lawsuit, she alleges that Fitzpatrick and 2 other employees at Groveland Prison, which now only incarcerates men, followed her orally or vaginally raped her hundreds of times between 1990 and 1991. In addition to Fitzpatrick, the lawsuit accuses a guard with the last name Harrison and a guard whose name Footman doesn't know. Her claim describes the employee's roles, shifts, times, physical traits, and in Fitzpatrick's case, a mole on his penis. In moving to dismissal her case, an assistant attorney general argued that the physical description of the 3 men were too vague and noted that the claim only provided the months rather than the exact dates and the assaults allegedly took place. On top of that, the state said it couldn't locate records of any of the accused employees, including Fitzpatrick's. And it submitted declarations from a DOCCS human resources employee named Daniel Maloney, who swore under penalties of perjury that he searched for Fitzpatrick. No one with the last name worked at DOCCS in 1990 or 91. And no one with the last name ever worked at Groveland, the declaration said. Footman's lawyer pointed out in a court filing that a public database of payroll and pension records did show that someone with the last name Fitzpatrick retired as head cook at Grayland Prison in 2010. The state argued that that was irrelevant. There is no value in learning that the Assistant Attorney General wrote when there was not a Fitzpatrick who worked at Groveland in 1990 or 91. That Fitzpatrick did work at Groveland during those years, New York Focus found. A public record request to the State Department of Civil Service, which maintains payroll records, yielded 2 records that showed that someone with the same first and last name and middle initial had worked as head cook at Groveland from 1985 to 2010. He was the only Fitzpatrick to come up in the department's search. The records came from the state's New York STEP payroll system, one of the databases that Maloney, the DOCCS Human Resources, swore he had access to. Maloney also couldn't find records of the Harrison description described in the lawsuit. In response to the records request, the Department of Civil Service said it did not have any records of anyone with the last name Harrison working at Groveland in 1990 or 91. Attempt to research Maloney by phone was unsuccessful, and he didn't respond to a message sent to his DOCCS email address. On February 12th, Footsman's lawyers submitted a letter to the court asking for an emergency conference to discuss the employment records that New York Focus uncovered. Later that day, the Assistant Attorney General submitted a one-page letter rescinding both her request to dismiss the case and the DOCCS Human Resources employees' declarations without explaining the error. Footman's lawyer said the ordeal illustrates the win-at-all-costs posture that DOCCS and the Attorney General Office have taken in defending against Adult Survivors Act lawsuit. What DOCCS and the AG's office just tried to do to Miss Footman is happening to thousands of women who cannot get justice because of these types of litigation tactics, says Konstantin Yelisavetsky, excuse the pronunciation, partner of the law firm Slater Schulman, which represents Footman and more than 1,200 other cases alleging prison abuse filed under the Adult Survivors Act. Until the state is held to account, not only will Ms. Footman and other women with pending lawsuits continue to be needlessly re-traumatized, but the women still in state prisons will continue to remain easy targets for the sexual predators the state is protecting. To Footman, the state's approach is reminiscent of what she experienced in prison when staff wouldn't believe incarcerated women's complaints about mistreatment. I am not surprised at all, she said about the state's claim that couldn't find Fitzpatrick. Those officers, they all stick together, she added. They'll all always say you're lying. Another topic that we have here in the local news of the Batavia Daily News is sex predator guilty in coercion case. Russell was convicted of rape 20 years ago, written by Scott Desmet. In Warsaw, a Genesee Falls man who in 2007 was one of the first, if not the first person convicted of predatory sexual assault for a knife-point rape will be going back to prison after he coerced a woman into having sexual contact by threatening to publish images of her on social media. To publish images of her on social media. Brett L. Russell, 49, pleaded guilty last week in Wyoming County Court to second-degree coercion and failure to register as a sex offender. He faces up to 4 years in prison for each count, but could not face a long term because he is on a lifetime parole. Russell was indicted in February on charges of second-degree coercion, unlawful dissemination of an intimate image, 4 counts of failure to register, and attempted assault for an assault on another inmate in Wyoming County Jail. The indictment accused Russell of threatening to publish intimate images of a woman in November. He also failed to register several social media and internet accounts with the state sex offender registry. He remains in jail pending sentencing April 2nd. Russell was released from prison July 25th, 2024, after serving 17 years of a 17-year and 6-month to life term imposed after he was convicted for predatory sexual assault, first-degree rape, and unlawful imprisonment. He was found guilty of raping a woman at knife point in October 2006. He had met the woman at a bar in Perry and offered her a ride home. Russell was believed to be the first person in New York convicted of predatory sexual assault, a law enacted in 2006. The law provided for a life prison term for anyone convicted of using a weapon to rape a woman. A similar law, predatory sexual assault against a child, also carries a maximum sentence of life in prison. Okay, let's lighten this up a little bit. Wild church session set for Saturday. In Bethany. The next Wild Church session will take place 10 a.m. Saturday at Genesee County Park. The session is set for Area A off 11095 Bethany Center Road. No religious experience or belief is required. Quote, if your soul is longing for renewal and deeper connection, join us in worshiping in creation. with creation as creation, unquote. Organizers said it's a new release. Another session is set for March 28th. Call 585-343-0505 or email fpcbatavia at fpcbat-avia.org for more information. And here's our little break. You are listening to me, Lori E. Morose, to a reading of articles and features from the Batavia Daily News on the Niagara Frontier Radio Reading Service. Okay, our next Cold Night Cafe in Batavia, open Friday. Clients, law enforcement, and community members may call as needed. Written by Brian Quinn. In Batavia, the Cold Night Cafe, a place for homeless or stranded people or people without heat or electricity to avoid harsh winter weather, was open Friday at the First Presbyterian Church. Oak Orchard Health and First Presbyterian Church said the space operates on as-needed basis when the temperature is below 32 degrees at night. Clients, law enforcement, and community members may call to request that the cafe be open. When activated, the hours of operation are 8 p.m. to 8 a.m., Monday through Friday, 2 p.m. Saturday to 8 a.m. Monday. Oak Orchard Health is proud to support this collaborative effort, creating a space that reflects our mission of neighbors taking care of neighbors, said Chief of Behavioral Health, Robin Guvolo. First Presbyterian Pastor, Reverend Dr. Raul Alkhori said, "This week our church opens its doors as a Cold Night Cafe, turning our building into a place of warmth and dignity for our neighbors. I am deeply grateful for the Oak Orchard Health staff and our community's volunteers who have stepped into this calling, reminding us that every person who enters our doors is a beloved child of God and that God loves everyone, no exceptions." By opening the Cold Night Cafe, we are embodying Genesee County's spirit of compassion and generosity. The creation of the Cold Night Cafe shows what compassion can achieve when a community unites. We're grateful to our partners, staff, and especially Batavia First Presbyterian Church. At Oak Orchard Health, we're committed to dignity for all, ensuring no one faces winter alone, said OOH CEO Marco Altieri. Those who need access to the warming center should call 585-340-1355. Okay, we're going to go back to a little military here. Comrades in Arms. France honors Western New York National Guardsmen for Iraq helicopter mission. Written by Matt Sertel. In Rochester, a life and death struggle in August 2023 didn't make a lot of headlines in the U.S. A force of French commandos was pinned down with one wounded and another missing in the battle of ISIS terrorists in Iraq. The unit called for reinforcements, and Army National Guard soldiers from Western New York acted quickly in response. They flew additional commandos into combat and eventually exfiltrated them from the area. The Guardsmen were honored Sunday morning in a ceremony in Rochester. Each was awarded a French National Defense Gold Medal with Bronze Star from the French military. It's just a testament to the Army and aviation. It's just a testament to what the Army aviation is all about, said Army Major General Michael Natali during the ceremony. It's a don't fail, very highly technical, skilled, and very highly physical. The incident took place on the night of August 28th and August 28th to August 29th near the town of Hoskiga in Iraq's Kirkuk province. The soldiers from Company B, 3rd Battalion, 126th General Support Aviation Battalion were standing by about 70 miles away in Erbil Air Base. Our job was mainly to react within 60 minutes to anything possible in the country, said former Chief Warrant Officer 3, Aaron Taylor of Blaisdell, Erie County. It could have been a downed drone. It could have been troops in the contact, or it could have been something like this: a missing soldier. The French force included 35 commandos with support from an American Award Air Controller, a MQ-9 Predator drone, and an AC-130 flying gunship. The guardsmen were alerted about 10 p.m. that a situation was developing. Taylor, a pilot, went to their base operations center, while Staff Sergeant Samuel Soko of Lockport went to prep their aircraft. They were flying big, twin-rotor CH-47s, Chinook helicopters, the kind area residents often see and hear overflying houses in the Glow region. The guardsmen learned that French special forces were engaged in combat and a commando was missing. The Americans were asked to fly additional commandos to the scene. The guardsmen flew an additional 30 French commandos in two Chinooks as close as possible to the combat zone, while in range of the terrorist positions. Former Sergeant Zachary Albright of Elba was a crew chief and a door gunner on one of the helicopters. After delivering the French commandos, the helicopters flew to Baghdad, where they refueled, waited, and then returned to exfiltrate the commandos. Taylor described the area they were flying into as a mix of desert, mountains, and farmland. The mission required speed, precision, and coordination. That included working with another nation's troops and ensuring all the aircraft involved didn't interfere with each other or collide. And it was accomplished in darkness in an active combat zone. Other units were dropping bombs on the ISIS terrorists as the Chinooks departed. The helicopters ultimately carried the commandos, including one fatality, out of the area. I believe the end result of the mission was one French KIA, 3 French wounded, multiple Iraq military wounded, and over 30 ISIS terminated, Sacco said. Albright has since been promoted to warrant officer and is currently undergoing flight training to become a pilot. He wasn't available to attend Sunday's ceremony. Sacco, a close friend, described Albright as an extremely professional and very good at what he does. French National Defense Gold Medal with Bronze Star was created in 1982. It recognizes military personnel for particularly honorable service during military operations and is frequently awarded to those in allied nations. Besides Taylor, Sacco, and Albright, those honored on Sundays including Chief Warrant Officer 4 Christopher Scott of Rochester, Chief Warrant Officer 2nd Jared Twigg of Rochester, and Sergeant Judata Estrada of Horseheads, Chamoun County. Beyond their technical skill and precision in carrying out the mission, the crews were also cited for their courage and dedication, both to their mission and to the military itself. We're very proud at what we do, done as aviators. But I'd say more importantly, I'm very proud of them being New York National Guard soldiers, Natalie said after the ceremony. The operation they were involved in happened in the dark of night, he said. The French government did not have to recognize our soldiers, but they went that extra mile to identify our soldiers who were working that evening to keep their soldiers safe. We're very appreciative of what the French government has done in recognizing our troops. Taylor and Sacco said that they were focused on the mission at the time as part of their job. It feels good, Taylor says, of the soldiers' recognition. It's nice to see when we're in a country that we're still part of NATO. We're still operating with our allies. It was nice to see the reciprocation back. Okay, we're going to go into the fatal avalanche put spotlight on backcountry skiing. Here's why people will keep accepting the risks. Written by Jack Dolan of the Los Angeles Times. For anyone who has stood freezing in an endless lift line at the ski resort or flinched at some out-of-control rad Brad whooshing by like a red bullet in a vodka-fueled mission, the allure of backcountry skiing needs no explanation. Out there, far from the manding crowd, it can be just you and your friends gliding through acres of untracked powder, surrounded by silent, untamed wilderness. Undoubtedly, that was part of the draw. That was the part of the draw that 15 people, 4 professional guides, and their 11 clients who went for President's Day weekend adventure in the remote slopes north of Lake Tahoe, only to become victims of the deadliest avalanche in modern California history. After 2 days in the back country, they were struggling home through a blizzard on Tuesday morning, when an avalanche that authorities said was the size of a football field swooped down and killed 8 of them. Another is still missing and presumed dead. As soon as the skiers were reported missing, and before the enormousness of their loss was confirmed, rescuers, other professional ski guides, and endless social media commenters started asking why they had ventured out when they knew a huge storm was on the way. There are indications it was not the first time the guide service, Blackbird Mountain Guides, chose to take clients out in the storm. An undated 5-star review on their webpage for the trip to the Frog Lake Huts, where the avalanche victims stayed, reads, "Despite the tough weather and significant avalanche conditions, they keep the tour safe, fun, and exhilarating. I now believe storm skiing may be the best way to go." The company has not responded to an email requesting comment. Dave Miller, owner of the International Alpine Guides in June Lake, which also guides backcountry skiing trips to the Frog Lake Huts, said storm skiing isn't as shocking as it might sound to a lay person. It's something backcountry skiers do all the time, just like resort skiers, he said. There are safe ways to do it, even in high avalanche danger. That safety depends on a lot of factors, but a key one is avoiding very steep slopes when avalanche danger is elevated, particularly when they're loaded with many feet of fresh, unstable snow. Skiers typically carry safety equipment such as avalanche... Oh. Okay, sorry about that. Skiers typically carry safety equipment such as avalanche beacons to help find each other if they get buried in snow, and probes to dig each other out. The survivors of this week's avalanche used an emergency beacon and the SOS feature on an iPhone to contact rescuers. Last winter, while guiding at a remote fly-in backcountry lodge in Canada, Miller said he and his clients were surrounded by avalanche terrain in all directions. Instead of risking it, they spent a stormy day skiing a relatively gentle slope between some trees right next to the lodge. It was great fun and not in or near any avalanche terrain. People who are unfamiliar with the sport might think that anywhere in the mountains is too risky to travel when it snows, but Miller said it's not like the entire back country is dangerous avalanche terrain. Most of it isn't. In the Castle Peak region north of Tahoe, where this week's tragedy unfolded, the journey from the trailhead to the Frog Lakes Hut comes with known risks. All routes involve avalanche terrain requiring appropriate education and safety equipment. According to the website for the huts, which are owned by Truckee Donor Land Trust, while a full accounting of what happened on Tuesday was not materialized, details offered at a news conference Wednesday indicate that the group was passing beneath the steep avalanche-prone slope when tragedy struck. Rusty Green, operations captain of the Nevada County Sheriff's Office, which coordinated the rescue of survivors, said he was told that somebody in the group apparently saw snow barreling down from above and yelled, "Avalanche!" While the scale of his week's avalanche has shocked millions and generated headlines around the world, the fate of its victims is all too familiar to practitioners of the extremely niche sport of backcountry skiing. Last year, after decades of skiing at resorts, this reporter took a maiden voyage into the eastern Syria backcountry with Howie Schwartz, a veteran guide based in Bishop. To get started, we glued skins to the bottom of our skis, synthetic material that allowed them to glide forward through the snow but stopped them from sliding backwards, making uphill travel possible. The uphill was exhausting, even for a distant runner. The temperature is well below freezing, but we left most of our layers in our backpack because we didn't want to get soaked in sweat only to freeze on the way down. Then came a review of the safety gear, which included avalanche beacons, devices about the size of old BlackBerry that can send and receive electronic signals. We strapped them to our chest so if one of us got buried, the other would theoretically be able to find the beacon. We also had probes, long, thin sticks that unfold like tent poles and are designated to punch holes in the avalanche debris and make contact with a buried partner. You hope you don't poke someone in the eye, but if you're using one, it's a life and death emergency, so it's no time to be squeamish. And we had collapsible shovels to help us dig if we were lucky enough to find our friend. The exercise was far more sobering than reassuring. It was clear that every step in the process would take time, and someone buried in snow is likely to suffocate within minutes. Putting on the beacon didn't make me feel as if it was a safe tragedy, as if it would be safe, but it made me confident someone would eventually find my body. Despite the joy of making effortless, bouncy turns through untracked powder and floating hundreds of feet through the trees in perfect silence, that's where the dream of backcountry skiing meets grim reality. As of the time last year, at least 245 people in the U.S. have been killed by avalanches in the preceding decade, according to the data compiled by the Colorado Avalanche Information Center and the U.S. Forest Service. Some victims were hikers and snowmobilers, but more than half were skiers. Backcountry skiers offers a very harsh learning environment, said Steve Mace, director of Eastern Syria Avalanche Center, which publishes daily updates on the weather and avalanche risk in California's high country. Skiers get lots of unreliable positive feedback, he said in an interview last year. You might have traveled a given backcountry route many times in all kinds of weather and think you figured things out, he said. But there are a million reasons why an avalanche might not release on any given day, Mace said. It may not be that you made good choices. It may be that you just got lucky. Reached on Thursday to discuss this week's tragedy near Tahoe, Mace said it wasn't unreasonable for that group to go out during this storm. He went out himself to collect data and first-hand information for his forecasts. I don't think they were going out there uninformed, and I don't think that they were being reckless, Mace said. But I think there is sometimes a fine line between pursuing your passion and mitigating risk. Last year, for our adventure, Schwartz said it can be hard to find the right advice to give new backcountry skiers. He doesn't want to underplay the dangers, but he also doesn't want to discourage people from something that could bring them joy. What you see more often than not, Schwartz said, is that people know what they're doing is dangerous. They're not there. There's a mortal risk, but they do it anyway. You are listening to a reading of articles and features from the Batavia Daily News. My name is Lori Morose on the Niagara Frontier Radio Reading Service. Okay, we'll go right into sports. Batavia sweeps the claim B1 sectional titles, winning 49th and 50th titles in program history. Written by Samuel Zurillo. Rochester, the Batavia indoor track and field team pulled out the brooms at the Section 5 Class B1 championship hosted by Nazareth University on Saturday, as both the girls' teams and the boys' teams swept the competition to claim both the sectional titles. With Saturday's win, the Blue Devils have now amassed 20 sectional titles on the girls' side for indoor, 13 titles on the boys' side for indoor, and 50 titles across indoor and outdoor. For Batavia head coach Nick Burke, this title feels just as good as if it were the first one he ever won. Every team is different, and you find value in things that get you pumped up about every team that's different, Burke said. What I can say about this team is they really embrace. We talk about, Batavia being a blue-collar community, like a community of tough people. And we want to embody that, and we want to embrace that. We think that our school is a school where kids go and they develop toughness, and then that is something that they demonstrate when they go out there and compete in athletics, and especially with our track team. We want to be tough no matter what. On the girls' side, the team would put up an incredible 184 total points en route to the championship win. Mallory Boyce had an outstanding performance on track, being named the meet's most outstanding track athlete after taking wins in both the 1,000-meter, 3 minutes, 59 seconds, and a 1,500-meter, 4 minutes, 51.71 seconds event. She also took the second 3,000-meter in 10 minutes. I'm really proud, Boyce said. I got a PR today, and I knew going into my races it would be like a battle. And now I'm really glad to how everything played out. And I'm so proud of my team, and I'm so happy to be a part of this team. Our individual first finishers for the Blue Devil girls in track events included Charisma Westcott in the 300-meter, Sophia Lawrence in the 600-meter, and Madeline Smith in the 55-meter hurdles. In relay events, the girls won the 4x400-meter relay with a team of Westcott, Nevaeh Thompson, Natalie Badaglia, and Lawrence, and the 4x800-meter relay with the team of Jalen Bradley, Anna DeRizo, Megan McGaharnan, and Lawrence. The Batavia girls dominated in field events as well, highlighted by most outstanding field athletes, winner Drew Stevenson taking the shot put and weight throw. Burke got a lot of the credit to the coaching staff around him, gave a lot of credit to the coaching staff around him for the success. So he had a lot of contributions in the throws and the field events. Mallory got first in 2 distant races and a second and third in a very tough race. I think that the thing that makes us a good team is the balance. That's a testament to our coaching staff, Burke said. Our coaching staff is unbelievable. I tell people all the time, I'm probably the least of our coaches. Our distant coach, Coach Boyce, is unreal. He's unbelievable. Coach Buckenmeyer, our sprint coach, he does a great job. Coach Edgley and Coach Reese, our jumps coach, they do a phenomenal job. Coach Clark, a Batavia grad, she coaches pole vault. We had multiple kids today scoring in the pole vault. And then Coach Greiger, who throws. Several athletes finished in second to aid the Yellow Jackets' efforts. Addison Buckley secured a part of second place finish on the night. Buckley was a second in the long jump with a distance of 16 feet, 2.5 inches, and the triple jump with a distance of 35 feet. Ella Sawyers added a second place to the 1,500-meter race walk in 10 minutes, finishing just behind her teammate Allison. Addison Campbell placed second in the 3,000-meter with a time of 12 minutes, 29.71 seconds. Perry scored in 13 events en route to the win. All right, that was our sports. Now we are going to the daily news on Dear Abby. Employee thinks loss of a pet equates to a loss of a child. Dear Abby, I supervise a group of 6 middle-level professionals. Usually we manage fine, but a current conflict may push me over the edge. Lauren lives alone with dogs that seem to be her only family. One of them, age 11, had been sick. She kept asking for sick leave to take him to the vet. I told her she had to use her vacation time for that. Well, the dog died, and now Lauren wants to take bereavement leave. When I refused, she had a fit and started yelling about unequal treatment because another coworker, Jenny, was allowed to take bereavement leave earlier this year. Jenny's toddler son died in a drowning accident. It was a horrific tragedy. Jenny was traumatized and incapacitated for weeks. The situations are not comparable, but Jenny heard Lauren yelling and comparing Jenny's child to her elderly basset hound. This is causing all sorts of interpersonal problems that HR has flatly refused to get involved with. I understand that Lauren loved her dog, but I also think she needs to get a grip. Apologize to Jenny and take a vacation if she needs to. It is unreasonable to expect an adult to know the difference between human and a dog and act accordingly. Stressed supervisor in California. Dear Supervisor, I think you already know the answer to your rather snarky question. HR at your firm may be reluctant to handle this hot potato because they do not have a policy in place that covers pet illness or bereavement for a loss of one. Please suggest it to your employer. That was the response. Okay, the next one. Dear Abby, my wife and I are seniors and I live in a one-floor condominium. I am in good health, but she has several medical issues, including impaired balance and mobility. She refuses the recommended physical therapy and rarely uses the walker I bought for her. She hates cooking now and wants to drive me almost daily. She hates cooking now and wants me to drive almost daily for takeout, which is expensive and time-consuming. Now she's talking about selling our condominium to move into a senior complex with independent, assisted, and continued care phases. All meals are prepared. I do not want this move and have told her so. When I do, she goes silent for days, telling me it's time for the change. I disagree. We are at an impasse, and I am upset about this. I'm considering divorce after 55 years. What do you recommend we do? Still Young in North Carolina. Dear Still Young, I recommend you discuss this with your CPA and your attorney before making any decisions. If you could afford it, an assisted living facility for her while you remain in the condo might be ideal. However, if that's not possible, would you be willing to send her to the facility while you rent a one-bedroom apartment for yourself? One thing I am pretty sure of. Your wife is signaling that she's shutting down. Her world is now smaller than it was. You haven't aged at the same rate, and it may be time to do for her what you would like her to do for you if the situation was reversed. You are listening to me, Lori E. Morose, to the readings of the articles and features from the Batavia Daily News on the Niagara Frontier Radio Reading Service. We're going to end these readings out with the points and counterpoints section of my opinion. The writers are previewing the State of the Union address. Trump is making America boom again, written by John Fredericks. 1 year ago, Donald Trump returned to office with 4 clear priorities: secure the border, lower costs for working-class Americans, restore economic growth, and put good-paying American jobs first. As he prepares to deliver his State of the Union address, measurable results are not visible. They are undeniable. And the second phase is already forming. First is his success at the border. Through executive enforcement, reinstate deterrence policies, expanded border patrol development, and tighter interior enforcement, illegal crossing have fallen to near zero levels compared to the record surges in 2023. The contrast is stark. Under President Joe Biden, mass illegal entry overwhelmed border communities and intercities. Trump reversed course in the matter of months, using executive authority enforcement discipline. Remember the argument that only sweeping legislation, including amnesty, could fix the crisis? Trump's first year has proven otherwise. Cartel leverage has weakened. Smuggling routes have been disrupted. Sanctuary loopholes have narrowed. Attempting unlawful entry no longer guarantees release into the interior. The incentive structure has changed. Communities along the southern border report relief from the daily strain of mass crossing. Law enforcement is no longer diverted to prior crisis levels. For American workers, labor market pressure from unchecked illegal immigration has eased. Border policy shifted quickly because enforcement priorities shifted quickly. Second in the Trump RX program. The administration prescription drug initiative emphasized price transparency, accelerated generic approvals, expanded competition and regulatory pressure on pharmacy benefit middlemen who have long operated in operatic pricing systems. The results are showing up in insulin pricing, brand name drugs, and common maintenance medications. Seniors on fixed incomes report lower out of pocket expenses in several high use categories. Employers have seen moderation in pharmacy benefit growth compared to prior spikes. Rather than expanding federal control over health care, the administration relied on competition and leverage. That approach has begun bending cost curves and have pressured families for years. Healthcare inflation remains a challenge, but Trump is moving prices in the right direction. Public health policy has also moved under the Make America Healthy Again initiative. Health and Human Services Secretary Robert F. Kennedy Jr. has targeted ultra-processed foods, aggressive marketing to children, and labeling practices that obscure nutritional content. Childhood obesity and early onset diabetes have become central concerns. The administration have pushed transparency standards, reformulation incentives, and stronger nutrient guidelines in federally supported programs. The objective is not prohibition. It is accountability and informed choice and reduce long-term chronic disease, which strains families and federal budgets alike. And there's the James Carville Standard. Is the economy stupid? The One Big Beautiful Bill reshaped the tax structure for working Americans. It eliminates federal taxes on tips, removes federal taxes on overtime pay, reduces taxes on portions of Social Security income, and expands small business expenses. The effort is direct. Service workers keep more of what they earn. Tradespeople working overtime see immediate benefits. Retirees experience lighter tax exposure. Small businesses are reinvestment in hiring, equipment, and expansion. This is not an abstract theory. It is cash flow in workers' pockets and capital flowing into local businesses. Labor participation has strengthened. Domestic energy production has reduced key input costs for manufacturing and transportation. Hiring among small firms is accelerating in multiple regions. The governing formula is straightforward. Lower tax burdens on work, reduce regulatory friction, prioritize domestic production, and allow private capital to move. More disposable income, fewer barriers to job creation, more American factories, more American jobs. Trump campaigned on results. He delivered and is now on the cusp of an economic explosion not seen in the United States for 100 years. The stock market, sorry, I lost my point here. The stock market has hit 50,000, and we have unpredicted GDP growth reaching 5% annually. Border security tightened, drug costs moved downward, public health policy pivoted toward prevention, tax relief reached workers directly. The direction is unmistakable. Year one delivered structural change. Year two is positioned to test how far and how fast the resurgence can run. Fasten your seatbelt, folks. The boom phase is coming to a main street near you. Did someone say midterms? That was good. Okay. Next article, we're going to go right into Americans Know Trump is Wrong by Elijah Henry. President Donald Trump is a consummate salesman, and his State of the Union address will certainly seek to convince Americans that our republic is in a better place. Despite some improvements, the American people at our core know that things still aren't as rosy as our president would like us to be. News that the consumer confidence has collapsed to the lowest level in more than decades surprises no one. Despite promises to immediately reduce prices, the American people are still paying through the nose for food and energy. The cheapest ground beef at my local grocery store is at least 50% more expensive than it was just a few years ago. Far from shrinking the government and reducing its roles in the lives of American people, Trump's second term has entrenched it further. With trillion-dollar deficits, widely prepetited taxes, and debris utility, government interference in financial markets, expansion housing regulations, and immigration policies that substitute one from a cohesion for another. Nobel Prize-winning economic Milton Friedman astutely noted that inflation is made in Washington, a product of excessive government spending, regulation, and particularly money creation. Yet, nowhere on Trump's agenda is a serious effort to radically reduce government spending. Remember how spending exploded during COVID? The shamdemic ended, but government spending never does. There is nothing more permanent than a temporary government program, except perhaps a government budget. This month, the Joint Economic Committee found that in January, the government ran a deficit of nearly $95 billion. For every dollar it takes from your paycheck and mine, Trump and Congress spend 1.39 U.S. government debt now approaches 125% of GDP. Trump's tax cuts, however, welcome in isolation, were never paired with commensurate spending restraint. As much as I hate taxes, we need spending cuts more than we need tax cuts. Frighteningly, entitlements have ballooned, military budgets have swelled, and border security has become another trillion-dollar sinkhole. As a result, the deficit has exploded. Terrorists imposed helter-skelter on allies and adversities have accentuated our economic pain. They function as a hidden tax on every American consumer and producer, regardless of how much the cost might be borne by foreign manufacturers. Estimates peg the 2025 burden of $1,000 per American household. By next year, it will be $1,300 per household. When the government imposes these taxes, it means that Washington, not individuals, decide which goods Americans may buy and at what price. That probably doesn't sound like a freedom you voted for. And the American people are certainly paying the price as the cost of everyday goods keeps rising. Government interference with human movement has exacerbated the situation. Trump boasting of negative net migration, millions of deportations, and a secure border achieved through ICE raids, self-deportations, and expanded enforcement. Certain studies hold that the immigration has noticeably economic benefits, generating as much as $14 trillion in fiscal savings over time. Without immigrants, our debt might balloon to 200% of national growth product, potentially causing economic collapse. It would be great to save the republic without destroying it. With multitudes of immigration being shut down, the door and policies generally orchestrated to hurt American wallets, and long-term economic consequences could be dire. Unable to boost incomes, the president has embraced the policy of gimmicks, as politicians tend to do so. For example, he has urged Congress to cap interest rates at 10% while decrying abuse lenders. Yet studies by Trump's former senior economic advisors show that 10% ceiling will shrink credit availability to underprivileged borrowers, young families, and small businesses as bank ration loans to the safest customers and hike fees elsewhere. Government interference in markets never goes well. Equality destruction is Trump's recent ban on private investors in the single-family household industries. It sounds great, except the economic history shows these investors are single-handedly responsible for increasing the supply of affordable housing. Banning them would reduce the number of cheap units available, creating bidding wars over limited housing inventory that will only worsen the problem for America's low-income families. Somehow, Trump actually believes cheaper housing is a bad thing. The bottom line is that on most issues, Trump has not turned America around, and his policies leave much to be desired for Americans who love freedom and affordable prices. There was a time when America knew that government governs best which governs least. We cannot thrive until we make this the core of our policies. Trump doesn't yet understand this, and his State of the Union speech will reflect that. Let's pray he comes around before the end of his second term. Our financial future depends on that. Elijah Henry is a public policy analyst and columnist. He wrote this for InsideSources.com. And you have been listening to a reading of articles and features from the February 24th, 2026 issue of the Batavia Daily News. We read the Batavia News every Saturday at 9 a.m. Your reader has been me, Lori E. Morose. Thank you for listening to the Niagara Frontier Radio Reading Service. Thank you for listening. Have a great day. Lori Morose signing out.
Coming up next in the Niagara Frontier Radio Reading Service, we have the East Aurora Advertiser. At 11 o'clock, we have the Niagara Gazette. And at noon, we have the Dunkirk Observer. Stay with us for these readings and more throughout the day. Radio Reading mails out a large print program schedule to our listeners every other month. If you have not received a Niagara Frontier Radio Reading Service large print program schedule in the mail, please call us at 716-821-5555. We will make sure that you receive one every other month. A Braille version of the schedule is also available upon request. Our number again is 716-821-5555. following program is intended for listeners who are blind, have low vision, or have another print disability